You're listening to the Comic Crusaders Podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more. Hey, yo, what up? It's your boy, Al Mega. Welcome to a brand new Comic Crusaders Podcast. And today we're going to talk some indie comic goodness. I mean, homie here is like a king of digital distribution, right? That's his forte, but he also is an amazing comic book writer, creator. He has this dope project out, right, called Halloween Team, out right now. To spend that paper on it. It's pretty fire. One of the founders, one of the creators. He is a future star right here. Let me tell you, it's going to be shining bright in the skies of the comic book world. Let me introduce this future legend, the one, the only, Danny Baram. Wepa, how you doing, kiddo?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. And that was quite an intro. I feel like I'm about to have like a wrestling match right now.
Are you ready then? Are you that fired up to talk about Halloween? Because that's what I want, baby. Let's do that. Let's do that. All right, bro. Let's get into your story, bro. First of all, before anything, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to come on to the show to talk about this, dope book, but as well as your journey. And let's get into that. All right. So where you originally from, were you raised, and what was your first taste of pop culture that you fell in love with?
Oh man. Well, I'm originally from a small town in Connecticut, Bloomfield, Connecticut.
Bloomfield.
Really small town. So that definitely influences a lot of my writing. But I now live in the LA area, so I've been here for about 15 years now, which is crazy and hard to believe. But I grew up in this small town. There weren't a lot of comic shops around. I would have to drive around to find one. And I'm from that generation, sort of elder millennial, that I really got into comics around like the death of Superman and Nightfall on the Batman side. And I remember
my God. Can I blow your mind right now?
Yeah.
All right. Watch this. I got to, as you're saying that you are a Nightfall guy.
Oh,
Look what I have in my hands that I got over the course of the week.
Oh, that's awesome. I think I have almost all of those from when I was a kid. But there were certain issues that would be hard to find, especially growing up like, in a small town. I would miss certain issues, and I'd have to like go and backtrack and try and find them at different places. So sometimes I would get like the incomplete story.
But how did you fall in love, though? What happened? How did you even discover? I mean, what was your first taste of the pop culture? Was it comics? Was it cartoons? Was it a video game?
Oh, man. I've always been just a giant pop culture nerd. Like, I was the kid who would get the new issue of TV Guide and, like, program...
TV Guide, damn.
I would, like, program my Saturday morning cartoon viewing. So I've always been that kid. But I loved... cartoons, comic books, everything, movies. So I've always been that person.
You know what, Danny? You just made me think about that for a moment. And you know what?
Yeah.
I was that kid too when I would get the newspaper. Oh, what time is what and when? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would always look at the listings. Yeah, man. Well, shit. There you go. I love that. That's funny that we did the same thing there. All right. So what was your jam though?
Man, Superman, Batman, DC Comics, that was always my big thing growing up. So I've always
Someone
been a
said DC. I saw somebody talking shit on Instagram talking about, oh, look at how many people I spoke to and they all say Marvel. Where are the DC fans at? And your first words are right here in your comics is DC.
Yeah, I grew up a big DC guy. I read all the DC comics that I could. And I think, again, it goes back to like the death of Superman being the thing that really got me into it at first. So I remember being at summer camp and, I was at like sleepaway camp and the counselors were into comics and every week they'd like go into town and bring back the new issue from the death of Superman and like Reign of the Superman. and we'd sort of pass it around to all the kids, and we all became addicted to it and like couldn't wait for that next weekly comic in the that triangle era of Superman. And
Yeah,
so
man.
that really got me into it. And then I went from there and started reading The Flash and Green Lantern, and that kind of got me hooked for life on comics. So
Oh shit! There you go. Now, did you have a tribe? I mean, other than the sleepaway camp, did you have a tribe growing up that was down with you and your nerddom, or were you that
no,
lone wolf in your town?
I did not really. I really didn't know a lot of people who were into comics, and it was sort of like I'm old enough that when I was a kid, it was still kind of something you kept a little
Yeah.
secret from a lot of people.
Right.
So I'm
Too many
jealous of
nerds in the
the
closet, man. That was when
yeah,
nerddom was in the
exactly.
closet, right? Jeez.
I'm jealous of the kids now who are able to just be so like open, wearing
Right?
their comic book T-shirts around and stuff.
And have debates at lunch about this stuff. I mean, back in the day, no,
Exactly.
man. Back in the day in my joint, there was either a
Yeah.
fight or somebody was rapping. There was no talking about,
Yeah. If you
comics.
ever found that one person who was like also reading a comic, it was like the secret society,
Right?
of
An
kids.
immediate brotherhood, sisterhood,
Exactly.
camaraderie, if you will.
Yeah. And I had an uncle, my uncle Jonathan, or I have an uncle who was really into comics too. And he also, like, in his childhood bedroom at my grandparents' house, he would have stacks of comics from when he was growing up that he would just take from like the barber shop, in the 60s.
Just
And
take.
he would have like Iron Man #1 and like all these
What?
comics that were, these big issues that were just sort of lying around. And he got
Wow.
them just randomly as a kid. And so eventually I would start getting into like his stacks of old comics and kind of going through them too.
Oh, nice. Check that out.
Yeah.
See, man, influence. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
So,
But when I
mhm.
moved to LA, that was really eye opening because
How old
I
were you when that
instantly
happened?
met. I was like 22 when I moved here.
Okay.
Um, and so I was out of college, and I instantly met a lot of fellow sort of comic nerds, and there were so many comic shops. I started going to Comic-Con every year in San Diego, WonderCon in Anaheim. And so I still get that like sense
Yep.
of amazement when I go, because I can't believe how many other people are out there that are into those same
Yeah.
things that I grew up
And all right,
into. So,
comicholics.
exactly. So I always appreciate how much comics and superheroes and all that stuff have kind of taken over pop culture. Because I remember growing up, it was a little bit like something that you were a little secretly ashamed of in a way.
Yeah, it's something you had to hide. Definitely, I come from that
Yeah.
generation as well, where
Yeah.
it was a select few. We hid that in our book bags, and not during lunch, but rather during class. We'd be like, "Yo, what you got? We want to swap? Some books."
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody read each other's stuff. That's the way it was, man. It was tough
Yeah.
on us. The
But yeah,
grind of the
DC
of the comic
Comics,
nerd.
man, that was my jam.
Awesome. All right, so talk about, when did the spark of creativity come into your life then? When did you
That was
decide, yeah, I want to start doing this? And what was that learning curve like when you decided to actually do
uh
it?
I think I've always been a creative person. I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, and for a while I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was my dream. And I realized at some point when I was older that I wasn't really like quite good enough to be a comic book artist, but I still love drawing. And actually, when I do writing, I often will just sketch out, the characters and things like that. But I always loved writing, drawing, being creative. I would make my own little comic books when I was a kid. So I always had that
I used to
as
make my
part of
own
me.
magazines. And look at me
Yeah.
now with an online magazine, if you will.
Oh, yeah. I used to sit with like my, action figures and just sit and draw every one of them, Ninja Turtles, stuff like that. So I always had that as part of my DNA, I think. I think I got it from my grandmother, who was also a really good artist and a very creative person.
So wait, so when did you even decide to do comics? When did this happen? What was it? When did you decide to do it though? And then how did you start building a team? How
Yeah.
did you figure it all out? Going from fan to creator.
It was something I always wanted to do and thought about for a long time. But, when I moved to LA, my focus as a writer really became film and TV scripts. And I spent a lot of
Ooh.
time doing that and trying to sort of break into that world.
In
But in
which
the
you did.
back of my mind, yeah, it's hard. It's easier said than done. But in the back of my mind that whole time, I thought about doing a comic and was kind of looking at how to do it. And eventually, a couple of years ago, I started getting more and more serious about it because I was like, you know what? If I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? And I had this TV script called Halloween Team. So it started out as a TV pilot, and I always thought it would make a really cool comic book. Even
Yeah.
just everything from the name to the characters to the genre. So I started looking into it and like, how do I go about this? I found a great artist, this guy Matt Schultz, who's phenomenal.
How
You should,
wait, yeah. Talk
yeah,
about that bromance there. How the hell did you find someone so extremely talented? Because folks, this is
yeah.
the book right here, so you can see beautiful cover. But talk
Thank
about
you.
it because the art is fantastic throughout the book, dude.
I got really lucky. I mean, I tried different forums and stuff like that to find an artist because I didn't know anyone personally who I thought would really be suitable. So on Facebook, there's a group called Connecting Comic Book Writers and Artists. And I posted there, I was very detailed in my post. I said, this is the comic, this is like the kind of artist I'm looking for. Here's generally what I'm looking to pay per
Okay.
page. So I was very upfront about everything I was looking for, including like what I would be able to pay. And I got a lot of responses. Some of them were sort of like spammy and didn't feel like I was talking to a real person. But Matt Schultz, the artist that we eventually went with, um, he was a great artist and was kind of the style I was looking for. And B, just was really affable when I talked to him and just seemed like he would be a great collaborator and someone I could bounce ideas off of and, build the world together with him. So that made it kind of a no-brainer that he was really the best of both worlds in that regard. And it is
Ooh.
interesting because his style I really liked. It wasn't exactly what I originally pictured, but the more
What
I
were you
worked with
picturing?
him,
What were you picturing?
I think in my head originally I was thinking of stuff along the lines of like a Pia Guerra or someone like that who has that more like
Okay.
minimalist
Yeah.
style. And Matt has this very expressive, I would say a little more like cartoonish style.
Oh
But I
yeah,
real
absolutely. I
yeah.
read this as a cartoon. I was like,
hmm
ooh, and it's beautiful. It's
And it's
beautiful.
funny because the comic is a little bit more adult when you start getting into it, and it has some kind of adult themes to it. But there's also a lot of nostalgia, and a lot of it is about contrasting childhood to adulthood. And so that sort of cartoonish style actually, in a weird way, fit with what I was doing the more I thought about it. It's funny because some people ask, like, oh, is this a kid's comic? And I can see where they see that maybe a little at first glance. But I think actually there's sort of layers to it of everything from the logo to the art has this sort of nostalgic Saturday morning cartoon type feel. But that's intentional because a lot of the comic is about, looking back at childhood versus adulthood. So it's sort of through that lens. And I think it worked out really well with the art.
So talk to me, man. What is Halloween team? Let the folks know so they could start spending that money. Because folks, if you look below in the show notes, right, there's a link to the Amazon store where you could buy this book and own your copy today. Trust you me, the comic book fan, you want this. This is what comics is, yo, for real. So talk about the birth of the idea and this universe, the Baram verse, if you will.
Yeah, I would love there to be some kind of interconnected universe one day. But yeah, Halloween team, the genesis of the idea was, I'm sure a lot of you listening or watching also were a fan of this, but I grew up, a big fan of the show Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh,
And I don't know, did you ever
damn.
watch it?
Nice. Yes, I know who you're
Yeah,
talking about. Yes, yes.
and
That's
that
about
was for me
several.
like a big gateway into like horror and spooky stories and stuff like that, along with some other things like the scary stories to tell in the dark books,
Oh,
things like
nice.
that. Um, and
I got
you
something for
know,
you, Martin, though. Have you
what's that?
watched Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities?
Oh, it's on my list. I gotta. I'm
Dude,
very excited. Yeah,
there's all right, good. If you're a horror fan, as you're
yeah.
making me feel that you are going to love these. I'm like,
Did you
whoa.
already watch it?
I've been peeping these, yeah, slowly,
Nice.
and I'm like, whoa, great, yo. I love when they give opportunities to horror from throughout the world,
Oh
so
yeah,
to see those different takes on what's horrific. I mean, they're doing a goddamn great job. Like,
yeah.
well,
I love
I'm digging
Guillermo
it.
del Toro. He's one of my favorite
Oh yeah,
directors,
man.
writers. So
And I love
yeah,
he does this whole Hitchcock type joint where he's actually opens the show. Old school Hitchcock. Twilight
yeah,
Zone. He
and
intros the show. It's so cool.
yeah, and I'm forgetting his name, but the guy who did Mandy, the movie. I heard he
Oh
has an
yes.
episode, and I can't wait to see that because I'm a big fan of that director too. So
Oh yeah, Mandy was fire.
yeah,
Oh
love
my,
that
there's so
movie.
much great horror. I gotta have you
Yeah.
back just so we can just talk about horror movies. But
Oh,
right now
totally.
we're
Yeah.
talking about Halloween team though. That's the
Yeah.
focus, folks. Before we keep deviating over here, going into rabbit holes on horror, because the focus is the amazing book that Danny and Matt got
um,
out right now. So yeah. So again, the origin of the birth of these characters and who they are in this universe.
Yeah. And so, I thought a lot about, I kept coming back to this idea of, these kids on Are You Afraid of the Dark that would gather, every week in the woods and tell stories around a campfire. Um, you know, what would happen to them as adults? And what if, what was that like? And what if you added this other layer to it of, what if they didn't just tell scary stories, but they actually solved mysteries and fought all kinds of ghosts and goblins and monsters and vampires in their town that they lived in and had all these adventures as kids? And what would that be like, 20 years later for them if they've gone their separate ways? And now in some cases, like with sort of the first character that we meet, Tommy, he's now sort of working this white collar, kind of dull, boring job, office job. He's not living a life of adventure anymore. And what is that like when you had this crazy childhood filled with adventure and mystery, and now you're an adult working on Microsoft Excel all day? What is that like?
And that's a horror story of its own.
Exactly. That's its own horror story. And that's sort of where issue one opens. And I think a lot of it comes back to thinking about this sort of like millennial generation that I'm a part of. And, we were definitely that generation that was told when we were kids, like, you can do anything, you can be,
Of
a
course.
writer, a director, the president,
Oh
whatever it
yeah.
is.
You could
And
cover the universe at
exactly.
your
And then,
will.
you end up sort of maybe pursuing that, but then you end up in an office job or doing something much more banal than you thought you would be. So,
You govern the universe of your cubicle.
exactly. So that's sort of some of the genesis of it. And, then of course, there's a new mystery that brings them all together for this one more
Ooh.
adventure after these characters haven't seen each other in many years. And so this story is really about what happens when they reunite and what are their relationships like and what has happened to them. And it sort of sets up this mystery. Some of them have one of the characters, Casey, who you'll learn a lot more about in issues 2 and 3. She has gone off to New York and sort of become this practitioner of magic and is sort of this very powerful, badass character now. And there's sort of a whole backstory there of what happened to her. And so there's a lot of fun, like character dynamics of, what happened to this team and setting up those relationships, looking back at what they were like as kids, but then now 20 years later, what is this group like, in the modern day? So
Gotcha. Look at this guy. So, are any of these creations based on anyone in your life? I mean, do you take any pointers from your own personal experiences growing up that we see in the book?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know that any character is based on just one person. I think the character of Tommy that you meet in the first issue, who is again sort of the gateway character to this universe, there's definitely some of me in that character. So, you know, people that know me that read the first issue, will be like, "Oh, is this based on you?" And there's definitely a little bit of
Hey,
that in
Danny,
there.
that's you. Stop this bullshit. Right? I know that's you, Danny.
But
Hi, I love it.
I remember Mark Waid, who great comic book writer. I remember as a kid reading an interview with him where he talked about writing The Flash, and he had one of the great runs on The Flash, and he
Yeah,
said that one of the keys to his success was putting a lot of himself into the character. So, I try to do that with a lot of my work. Even it's not like it's autobiographical, but you put something of yourself and your experience into it. Now, I definitely did not, like I just said, when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't necessarily have that like tribe of friends that,
yeah. You
so
didn't
it's
have
sort of,
your Halloween team.
yeah. So it's sort of almost a fantasy of like, you all wish,
Okay.
you wish when you're a kid that you had this group of friends that like you had adventures with and
Oh yeah.
shared all your interests. And,
That's
for a lot of
I
us,
was
you don't
lucky.
have that. So,
That's why I always ask because I feel I
yeah.
was very blessed. I had
Hmm.
that growing up.
Hmm.
I mean the group that actually liked the real nerdy stuff
Yeah.
was small, but within a greater group that just liked
Uh-huh.
pop culture, but just like
Yeah.
specific things. So we all connected because we like certain aspects of the culture, whether it was music, comics, movies, etc.
Hmm.
But there were cliques within the group. The comic guys, the music guys, the movie guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was blessed. That's why I
Yeah.
always ask this question because it was easy for me to connect with these kids around here. I
Hmm.
guess maybe in our circumstances and the availability of the media,
Yeah.
newsstands and actual comic shops near us.
Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's sort of a fantasy, and but it's kind of a cool idea of what if you had that group? So that's definitely there's bits and pieces of people I knew, but it's not based on any one person.
All right.
So yeah.
So what are we looking for over here? What's popping with the future of the Halloween team universe? I mean, we got the
Um,
dopest suit #1 right available now on Amazon,
yeah, it's
folks.
available now on
Right now.
issue 1 and 2 are out on Comicology or Amazon. Also on Global Comics, if you use that platform, you can get them
Oh,
there.
Global Comics
Hmm.
rocks,
Yep.
man!
Hmm.
I hung out. I had the honor of hanging out with Eric and Chris during New York Comic Con. Great guys that really uh are let me see care about the independent creator and then being able to
Hmm.
succeed. So Global Comics is an amazing platform, yo. Shout out.
Yeah, it's great, and they really support indie creators and
They
comics
do.
really well. So
They do.
really appreciate everything they're doing. And it's super hard. Like obviously, Comicology is the biggest platform that we're on in Amazon, but it's super hard to break through the algorithms there and get visibility for the comics. So I'm just out there doing whatever promotion I can on social media and shows like yours. Um, so we really appreciate everyone's support because if you check out the comic, you'll see that we're really just barely scratching the surface of the story. And so we'd love to do more. There's so much more story to tell here. And I think by the end, you'll get a complete story out of these 4 issues, but you'll also have a lot of questions. And so I'd love to be able to continue to answer those questions with more issues. So,
So
you
how
know,
far I need to know how far ahead are you story wise?
we're finishing up the art on issue number 3 now. So we're hoping to have that out early next year. So we'll have a little gap.
Okay.
But we should have issues 3 and 4 out early next year. So, we wanted to make sure we got out the first 2 issues before Halloween because it's such a good thematic,
Oh,
thing,
it's
and we wanted to
perfect.
tie it in.
It's a
Um,
perfect Halloween book for sure, man. It's again
yeah.
gorgeous book, folks. You guys have no idea how beautiful the book is.
So we wanted to do that. But yeah, number 2 ends on a pretty big cliffhanger. So you're going to
Another
be
one
really
outside of
eager.
number one. All I got three was number
Yeah.
one, folks. And he goes, that had a cliffhanger that I was complaining about on the green room. Like, how dare you leave me like this? I
Yeah.
gotta, I
2
gotta
ends on
get
a
these
big
other issues.
cliffhanger as
Okay.
well. And 3 is when you really, each issue, I would say, really ramps up. So 1 is sort of like a more quiet, almost introduction to this world. But in number 2, you start getting a lot more action. You get some more horror. You get
Okay.
demons from hell that are invading the character's old high school.
Oh damn.
So you get some pretty crazy, wild stuff in issue number 2 for sure.
Oh damn, bro. There we go.
Yeah.
I'm digging. You hear, folks? Look, and I've been showing this the whole time. I just want to clarify. So you need to follow Danny on Twitter. So he got two joints. So it's Danny Baram, okay, Danny
Yes.
DANNYBARAM, and then you can also follow the book and the shenanigans that's going on there at Halloween Team 22, the number 22. You heard? So that's some real talk right there. So I want end the show with two things. First, a thank you as a comic book fan, and thank you
Hmm.
for the pleasure of allowing me to read issue number one. I'm hooked, and and your homie Matt over here have done a wonderful fucking job with the book. Thoroughly entertaining, put a smile on my face ear to ear. I was like, yo, this feels so 80s and so fun, and
Yeah.
you skip from the 80s into the now, and it's perfect. It's perfect for people of our age
Hmm.
and younger to see because
Yeah.
it's
If you like
beautiful.
Stranger Things, Buffy, that kind of stuff, I think you'll
Oh,
really
dude,
dig this.
yeah, you're right.
Um,
It's
so I
dope.
hope people check it out. And, I'll give just one more shout out too to the artist, Matt Schultz, who's really great. You can follow him on Twitter or Instagram as well. Super talented. And he's been adding so much to this comic. So, and he's doing everything, by the way. He's doing pencils, inks, colors, letters, art, covers, cover art. So he's doing it all. He's really amazing.
Wow. So okay,
Yeah.
so before we go, homie, what type of advice do you give anyone trying to step into the game today?
Yeah, I'd say, just plan out what you want to do with your comic. Have a budget that you try and stick to because it can get expensive. And, for me, that was one of the biggest hurdles for a while was how am I going to pay an artist and how am I going to make that happen? And I know people go like the Kickstarter route, stuff like that. But, I decided to just put some money aside, find someone who could hopefully do the art at a reasonable rate. And we were able to make it happen. But, plan out your budget, plan out your timing, um, you know, find an artist who's a good collaborator if you can, who's not just going to be doing the art and never talk to you, but someone who can really help with the world building and the character design and all that. And just make it happen. It's not easy, but I'm really excited because, with writing scripts, for example, so much of the time you write your script and it just goes out into the void. But to see, my script come to life in a comic like this is so exciting and thrilling. And I would recommend it for anyone who's a writer because it really is rewarding to have your work out there in such a tangible format. So, it's not easy, but reach out if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help if I can.
All right, so I do want to leave with one more question then because it made me think
Yeah.
about that. And I've
Hmm.
seen people converse about this on the socials. So when you say about budgeting, what's a
Mhm.
fair assessment of that you should bank on the side to make your project come to fruition? What's a fair number?
I think realistically, you're going to end up spending about, at a minimum, like $70 per page of the comic, and it could get higher for sure. So think about that. You're probably going to want to come up with the number of issues that you're going to do in advance, so you know what that budget's going to be. It's not really feasible, unfortunately, to do like an ongoing comic series on a small budget. So
Yeah,
I would really think about, do like a one shot, a graphic novel, a mini series, in order to keep your budget manageable.
there you go. Yeah, that's real talk, folks. This is what this is about.
Yeah.
Trying to learn how to navigate the game.
Mhm.
Cause homie doing it. He's up to issue 2 of a beautiful book. I mean, right in
Yeah.
time for Halloween, folks. So for real,
Yeah.
I gave you the link in the show notes. I need you to click that link. Money well spent, trust me. But please support amazing independent creators like Danny and Matt. Danny, make sure to send me Matt stuff so I could add it to the show notes. Follow the artist at, and that way they're aware of his handles. But right now, you can go ahead and follow Danny as I showed below, Danny Baram and Halloween Team, the number 22 on Twitter. Show the love, show the support. You know what I mean? Don't just repost and retweet, but spend that money, baby. Make
Yeah.
it rain on independent creators, baby. That's what we
Yeah.
need because people like this are the future of the game. And I'm
Yeah. And
telling you, this is
honestly,
an A game book.
we know we're not going to like make a ton of money from this. It's really about getting it out there, getting buzz, getting fans to check it out. So
Yeah,
tell your
Danny.
friends, share it with people, and give us a shout out on social media if you like it.
Yeah, Danny, if this could be anything other than a comic, I'm just
Hmm.
asking again. I know you're not thinking about that. It's not why you did the
Yeah.
comic. But
Hmm.
if the opportunity ever arose and they
Yeah.
approach you with an opportunity to bring this to a different media format, would
Hmm.
you prefer to this to be like a live action TV show, an animated series, a film series? What would you want out of this?
I think it'd be cool as a live action TV show. I mean, I like I said, I did originally write it. This idea as a TV pilot, and first and foremost, I want to get the comic out and uh, you know, get people to check out the comic. But it would be cool if I could at some point go back to doing it as a TV show
TV
as
show.
well. So,
Let's
there's a
manifest,
pilot script
baby.
that exists. It's out there.
Manifest. It's out
Uh,
there.
yeah,
Let's get that juju going. Yeah, baby. Somebody
exactly.
pick it up. Netflix, Hulu, you need these. Stop canceling shows. If you want to
Yeah,
do new stuff, Danny ready for you. He got something new for you. This could be
yeah.
like an awesome seasonal thing too. Every Halloween,
Hmm.
you got the new Halloween team series to drop. I mean, it sells itself. This thing. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, check out
Right?
that logo. That's a pretty good logo, right? Right here.
It is good. Did you design that?
I worked a lot with our artist Matt Schultz. Like, he deserves the most credit,
Okay.
but
There you
I
go.
definitely had some ideas. Like, we actually spent like a lot of time on this logo to get it right, because it was really important, to me to have a cool logo,
That's
and it
branding,
came out
baby. I
so
mean, look how
well.
nice it looks on the shirt. Look at that.
Yeah, we have T-shirts too. So if you need a Halloween party T-shirt, you can go on Design by Humans and get the Halloween team T-shirt. So
Woo!
got to
You
get
got
some
that
merch out
swag.
there, right?
Get
Check
that
it out.
swag, baby. Make it that you're
Exactly.
down. If you don't want to dress up, you can just wear the Halloween team. I
Yeah,
don't need
just
to
wear the
dress up.
Halloween
I'm
team
down with the
T-shirt.
Halloween team. I'm good.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Danny, thank you so much for your time, brother. I appreciate the hell out of it. I'm sure all the people that were listening and viewing too, you dropped some knowledge. Thank you for sharing, especially that advice, because that's real talk, bro. So,
Yeah.
not many people share on that level. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And with that, folks, you know what to do, right? Outro is going to give you everything, but of course, follow the extended family, like the No Price Podcast for the Crusade, the Old Timers Comic Book Show, Toyverse, and K-pop Cosmos. We got everything, folks. We cover all media. It's sloppy spoilers, cinema crusade. My gosh, we do it all. But most importantly, follow amazing creators and support amazing creators like Danny. I'm gonna say this. I can't state this enough when we do these shows, because creators like you are the future, Thank you, again, for being so brave and bold and sharing your stories with us as a whole. All right. So, God bless everybody. You know what it is. Hasta la próxima, mi gente. I'm Omega with the amazing Danny Baram. Wepa, later. Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.shop and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.